Everyone, welcome to the channel or back to the channel for another video about art furniture here from the past. And now I always stress that that's very different from usual antiques. But anyway, today we're going to be taking a look at this wonderful mid-18th century French secretary desk, dating give or take to the 1750s here. And right away we're going to see the crackling across the veneers here, which is just a wonderful sign of the age of this piece, which is, mind you, in very good condition. But if we continue to take a look, we're going to notice some areas here where some veneer flecks have been replaced. Just some signs of the meticulous maintenance restorations that a piece like this has received, congruent with how it's really been prized, most likely, by all of its owners since it was made. And now on that note, it is important to raise some awareness about this pre-industrial art form so that new generations of collectors don't conceptualize special art pieces like this as just any old antique. It's only when we pause to appreciate this art form that we're going to invest in those maintenance restorations that are so critical to a work of art like this surviving across time. And on that subject of restoration, that's something that's often misunderstood in furniture from the past as something that's categorically value destroying. Now, in fact, here we really need to differentiate between these preservation practices, touching up a few veneer flecks here so that this piece can live up to its inherent beauty, the revarnishing, which is just necessary to seal this piece off to preserve the wood from the elements. We need to distinguish between maintenance restorations and then, of course, a different type of restoration where we would seek to conceal major damages that a piece has endured. None of that's going on here. And so, with that being said, for some reference points, we are going to see pieces just like this in the key Parisian history museum, the Musée Carnavalet. We'll also notice that pieces like this are going to show up published in key texts, French texts on the subject of art furniture. And we're even going to see secretary desks just like this conserved in the French Ministry of Culture's National Furniture Reserve, Mobilier National. And so that's why I thought that sharing this piece with you would be relevant, why it would be good for us to have some footage here to preserve it online so that anybody can take a look at it, whether you are a seasoned collector or whether you're someone new to the subject looking to hone your eye as you decorate your home. And so, firstly, the style here is called the Louis XV style, named after the monarch who was in power at the time. But this style is also referred to as Rococo. Rococo from rocky or uneven ground, as this is a style which is light-hearted, which is curvilinear, and which evokes motion. But in general, it is far more comfortable than the previous Louis XIV style, and we see that it draws its inspiration from nature, not from classicism. And perhaps the Rococo period armchairs there of the same style and period are going to be a more obvious demonstration of this curvilinear style than, say, a secretary desk. But we can see the Rococo style here a little better in these armchairs, which require less architecture than a case piece, especially with their period-themed fabric. And so we should also mention that a piece like this back then was made by a collaboration of artists, one who made this complicated frame, another who executed and then applied these elaborate and elegant veneers. Then, of course, there were the bronze casters and the bronze gilders. And in French, a work of art like this is referred to as a meuble d'ébénisterie, a work of veneer art, and that evokes this notion of all of these different artists from different guilds coming together to create something really so improbable in a time before running water and electricity. And now on that subject of ébénisterie, of veneer, of, as it is in French, from ebony wood, ébénisterie, the first wood that was used to make veneers, on that subject, we see how the veneers really are the source of the bewildering decor on this piece, especially this typically Louis XV period rose on the facade. Now, the green accents in the corners are, one, a particularly successful part of this desk, two, they're my favorite part of the piece, and three, they are probably imitating green tortoiseshell, which was a very prized material used on luxury pieces during the 18th century, prized certainly more than anything by the tortoise, but, you know, we see something here in those green accents that would remind us of the work of the H family of master furniture makers in Grenoble. Now to make this rose, they would cut a pie slice shaped chunk and then slice that and fan the pieces out to make the rose, which is here bordered by a very thin strip of inlay in a lighter colored wood. And then around the rose, we see book-matched veneer sections, butterfly winged, as I believe it's called, with these darker shoots here that are pointing towards the center, which are sort of dancing around. In any case, there's something fiery to those darker shoots that point towards the rose, and we see with that how the Rococo style, being derived from nature, isn't just all about flowers. You know, there's some thorns to it, there's some fire to it. There's a tumultuous and even a little dangerous side to nature as well. Just as we might notice these key escutcheons here, which appear as if splashed by the sea. Moving right along so that we can see the complexity, really, of how this was thought out. The cap pieces here are horizontal, and then they move up to a smooth section, before we then take a look at the sides here, and we notice these kingwood panel sections, which are framed in darker rosewood. Now, of course, these panels are just veneered, but they are simulating the two-dimensional panels that we're going to be encountering on, solid wood case pieces. Okay, so for inside the desk, whichever way the key turns, I can never remember this. This is above my ability to... Oh, for God's sakes, could it have locked itself shut completely? I'm kidding. It's totally fine. It's totally fine. Anyway, so for inside the desk, we see here on one from the mid-18th century that this piece is a little bit less complicated than the early 19th century secretary desks that we've already been taking a look at. But comparing these two is like comparing apples from oranges, because this is really an early secretary. It's the earliest one that I have ever found. But let's just go ahead and take a look at the wonderful matched vertical veneers here on the contoured facades of the drawers. We notice how the drawer contour follows the scrolls of these little shelves and compartments for storing papers and letters. And now I love the little drawer pulls here, which are all irregular because they were made in the pre-industrial era. Nothing was regular back then when you had to make them all by hand. Nothing was made in a series, as we see, of course, with the vast majority of antiques out there post-industrialization in Europe. But anyway, looking at this metalwork is one of the simple, superficial ways to, at a glance, check for period authenticity. And we first see that they are all irregular, but the next thing we do is we unscrew one carefully. And without getting too scientific here, does the screw look like the threads were chiseled out by hand in the mid-18th century, or does this look like a modern screw? And here we have clearly something that's akin to 18th century metalwork. It's nothing like the screw threads we would see from a hardware store today. Anyway, the leather is probably replaced here, but we see that it was adorned with some gold embossed borders here, which are always nice. And original leather on a piece that's 270 years old probably wouldn't be suitable for use anyway. Again, that's another one of these questions about, does a house have its original coat of paint? Well, a functional desk like this probably won't have its original leather. And then, if we close the fall front, we can just glance inside of the bottom compartment, but we see that it's a simple storage space, which is not quite as compelling as the upper compartment. And then we notice the addition of some subtle curves down here in these miniature cabriole legs, which of course are adorned with this protective bronze ornamentation that adds more of a Rococo element to the whole piece, especially this center bronze element here. But these bronzes are, of course, protective as well as decorative because, this keeps you from hitting that with the vacuum in the 1750s or, stumbling into it every day with your feet. And then, of course, the key escutcheons here protect the delicate veneers of the piece every time that you would stick the key inside to open your desk. And so, everybody, with all of that being said, I very much hope that you've enjoyed taking a closer look at this wonderful piece from the 1750s. I thank you all very much for your time, and if you would like to support this endeavor of raising awareness about the decorative arts so that people understand the difference between these wonderful works of art and everything else we ambiguously qualify as an antique, if you'd like to support the endeavor of creating an online period furniture library of the most compelling pieces that I encounter, please subscribe to the channel. It would be much appreciated. Thank you.